Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Yao. I'm a senior educational therapist with DAS. Currently, I'm a core team member with the preschool program itself. And like what Dr. Tan has mentioned earlier, DAS actually has a DAS preschool program, which we've actually started out a few years ago. So how do we actually get our students? So when we have children who, from K1 and K2, when they start to show signs of having early literacy difficulties, then we can actually recommend the teachers and parents to get the child to join our program. How do we actually identify the child, whether they have any literacy difficulties? Most of the students I have within our preschool program at K1 and K2, some of them have difficulties with letter sequencing. Some of them can't read, they can't even form letters at all, so which is quite worrying if you're at 6 years old, right? I mean, moving forward, if you go to mainstream school, the kids are expected to be able to at least write A to Z, sequence the letters. Yeah, so if the child do not have good foundation of alphabet knowledge and letter identification, which are the essential foundation needed for early literacy, then the child will continue to show difficulties with reading and spelling itself. Yeah. So today, I'm actually going to share with you on my thesis, which is focusing on the effectiveness of family literacy program on the preschoolers at risk of literacy difficulties. Why did I decide to pursue interest in this topic? Firstly, I've actually taught the primary and secondary school students at DAS itself. So I have seen for myself what early intervention has done to my children who actually received it when they're K1 and K2. Moving forward, when they actually enter the P1 into the mainstream education, they actually are able to cope with the school curriculum much better than students who actually join our primary school program at a later age. Yeah, and more importantly, I actually have a lot of parents, the preschoolers and the lower primary parents who come to me and ask me, hey, how do I actually go about helping my child? Or my child is not very keen, he or she doesn't like writing, he or she doesn't enjoy reading at all, and I can't do anything to help my child. So as a teacher, I will share tips and strategies. However, this is based on my experience, like, oh, one parent approached me, and because I've taught the child, then I can tell them, oh, this is what you can do at home. Yeah, but then across board, if you're looking at the preschool level, sometimes parents may not know that, hey, you know, your child actually needs fundamental skills. Yeah, it's called managing the expectations, right? I mean, sometimes they tell me, oh, I want my child to be able to read, but the child has difficulties with letter formation or even letter identification itself. Yeah, so then I've decided to check out this thing called Family Literacy Program. It's a highly researched area. Yeah, so what exactly is a Family Literacy Program? To put in layman terms, Family Literacy Program is essentially a program where you teach the parents or any child giver at home any literacy activities to help the child to develop their early literacy skills. So early literacy skills, we can be talking about just letter formation, for example, or letter knowledge or alphabet sequencing. Yeah? So what is my research objective? Basically, I need to determine if family literacy program will actually help our children with their early literacy skills. So if I share something with them, I need to know whether is it effective or not, rather than just hearing from one parent. If I hear it from a group of parents, then I know that, hey, this program is actually working. Yeah, okay? So what are my research questions? First, I wanted to find out, does FLP actually increase early literacy attainment? So is it true that if I come up with something very specific to cater to our children's need, does it actually help them with their early literacy? Because we always talk about how we want our parents to spend extra time with their child, do activities with your child. These will actually help to promote their literacy skills. But is it something that has been measured before? Probably not so. At least with my kids, I would like to know, is it the case? And the second thing is, I want to find out parents' perception of the effectiveness of the program itself. I want to know, how do parents actually feel about the program, whether is it relevant to them, whether is it not so relevant to them. Okay, so in my participants, I actually have two groups, the experimental group and the control group. In my experimental group, I had children, I had 4 boys. If you're wondering, why is there a mean age of about 71.6 months? That's because in our preschool program, we actually do have a handful of children who actually K2 repeats. K2 repeats are generally students who are supposed to be in primary 1 this year, but for various reasons, for example, they may not have sufficient literacy knowledge, they do not progress onto the P1 mainstream school. So they actually repeat their K2 again with us. Okay, and then in my control group, I had 3 girls and 2 boys. So my participants are actually the students that we have in the DAS preschool program itself. Okay. How do I actually go about conducting the research? So first, once I've actually recruited my students for my experimental and control group, I actually come up with an FLP intervention that actually covers 6 weeks. Yeah, and then at the end of the intervention, I actually did a post-test with them, with both my experimental group and my control group. So what did I actually measure, at the pre-test and at the post-test itself? Okay, I actually adopted this tool. It's called the Observation Survey of Early Literacy Achievement. So in this observation survey, we actually identify 5 key components, which are letter identification. So letter identification in both uppercase and lowercase. So I'll give the child a list of uppercase and lowercase and get the child to identify the letters. I mean, these are things that we take for granted. We will expect the child to know, but the fact is sometimes we do, or within our classroom and within our preschool program, we have children who have difficulties with letter identification. Yeah, then concepts about prints. What are concepts about prints? Concepts about prints actually cover quite a few things. First thing, book orientation. When you hand a student, when I hand a child a book, does the child knows where do you actually start flipping? For us, some of us, we know that, you start from the left to the right. Yeah? But for some children, they will actually take a book, turn it upside down, and they don't even know where to begin. Concepts about prints can also refer to, does the child even know where to start reading? That you have to actually start reading from left to right. We have children who may not even know where's the left, where's the right. Things like, what is a capital letter? What is a small letter? Yeah? Word test. So these are high frequency or otherwise known as DOSH list words. Writing vocabulary. That actually requires a child to write down as many words as they know onto a piece of paper. So for every word that they've written correctly, then we'll award them the point. Yeah, any letter reversal, we will not give them the point itself. And hearing and recording sounds in words. This actually tests on their the phonological awareness. Yeah, that, for example, I give them a sentence like, this is a big red bus. I mean, this is an example. Then the child is supposed to hear it, repeat the sentence, actually write it down onto the sheet of paper itself. We think that it's easy, right? But may not be that case. So what happens in my family literacy intervention program? I actually came out with 2 workshops. And if you're wondering, how do I actually come up with the content of the workshop? So based on research journals, they have made recommendations. So I've actually focused, I took a few of the ideas and catered it to what our preschool children need. So as we all know, recognizing and forming letters are the essential foundation needed for reading and spelling. As I have parents who come in, right, then they will, we have parents with children of different learning literacy level. So the first thing I actually tell them is the importance of letter formation. Yeah, because children who scribble from bottom to the top instead of from left to right. So then we'll tell them that these are essential skills your child will need to know. Because if the child has difficulties with letter formation, then if they keep doing the same thing again and again, it will eventually hamper their ability to write efficiently when they move on to a mainstream school. We also focus on letter identification. This is to make sure that the child is able to recognize letters at using different fonts. And then for some of the parents who have kids who are able to read some simple words or at blending stage, then I'll teach the parent how to do the blending. And after that, then we touch on the spelling itself. Within the family literacy, within my session with the parents, I actually covered this 4. Yeah, because it was actually quite informal. I had about 4 or 5 parents, and along the way, they will actually share what their child is struggling with. Yeah, and this seems to be quite common. So I tweaked the program the workshop a little bit to cater to their needs. Yeah, otherwise then the parents wouldn't be very interested in what I'm actually doing with them on a Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. in the morning, right? Yeah, I don't want them to waste their time coming down. Yeah. Okay, so after that, I actually conducted a second workshop again. So this workshop, we actually focus on the importance of book reading. So as mentioned earlier in the keynote, our preschool program students actually have access to Rest Kids, which is actually an online e-book reading platform. Yeah. So because it's something that's already given to the parents, and the students, we thought, hey, might as well just tap onto something that the parents have access to. So during the workshop, what I'm emphasizing is use the things that you have at home, or cheaper alternatives that you can buy from either Daiso or Pasar Malam for local context. Yeah, because sometimes parents ask you, hey, where do I get this resource from? Yeah, and we also don't want the parents to be spending too much money buying expensive resources. So why book reading? Since my students already have the access, why not tap onto it? Yeah, so most of the parents commented that the child actually enjoys listening to the story, but not so much the act of reading itself, which is a torture for them. Yeah, so then this is the point where I thought that, hey, reading itself is a good way, a good platform for the child to build up their vocabulary. It is also a good way for them to expose to different language, to the language itself. Yeah. So before reading, I shared with them, before you start reading, to get your child excited, you must talk about, hey, we're going to start reading a book. Yeah, so come up with something interesting for the child. Do an introduction, and then you can do a picture talk. Yeah, this is also the same way you can increase the child's vocabulary. I also share with them the importance of 5W1H. I mean, it's quite simple, right? If I tell you like who, what, where, and then why, and the other so on and so forth, then the parents have an idea like, what do I actually do with my child? Like, I have a book, but is there anything that I can ask? So I'm giving them like specific tips and strategies that they can work with their child. And more important, to activate their power knowledge. So I tell them, before you start reading, you must ask the child, have you been to a playground? So it helps to trigger their memory. That will make them more excited to read. So during reading, I also share with them the importance of your voice. Some parents when they tell me, they're like, yeah, I read quite monotonous like that. Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe your child you maybe need to use a little bit more, instead of monotone voice, you use up, high pitch and low pitch. Also to ensure that the child is actually tracking the words. Yeah, from left to right, because sometimes they say the child is reading, but they're just zooming past the sentence. And to encourage participation. So always go back to the 5W and 1H question to prompt the child. And after reading, what they can do with the child. You can just ask the child a simple question like, hey, what do you remember reading about this book? Relate the content of the book to their personal experience, and then to express themselves about how did they actually feel about this book. If you're in mainstream school, there's show and tell when the child goes to primary 1. So this is a good opportunity and a safe environment for the child to express their opinion without being judged by others. Especially so when we have parents and child who come and say that they don't really enjoy school as much because they are being judged for being not as good as their peers itself. Okay, so what did I find out? Well, surprisingly, there is no statistically significant effect of FLP on overall early literacy achievement. I mean, as we all know, research has shown that, or at least we tell parents that, hey, if you do something with a child, you will see improvement. However, in this case, it doesn't. Yeah. Hold on. Okay. Okay, sorry. So why is that so? One possibility could be because, for example, remember I tested them on the letter identification. They have actually reached the maximum. So obviously you cannot see any improvement. And is this all our students as of right now? Most of them, they come in, they are actually struggling. So at K2, let's say they have no letter knowledge, no letter formation, or very poor reading or sight words knowledge, then it will not be reflected in this data itself. Yeah. So it's not so much that there's no effect, but perhaps because our students are really struggling, they probably need more time to actually pick up the skill sets in order for us to actually see the results. Okay. However, parents, they actually agreed, they have positive perception of the effectiveness of the program. So some of them said that the use of discussion and hands-on activities actually helped them to understand, how can I help my child? Okay. Yeah, and also they were also more confident because a lot of them were asking me how, but through this workshop, they are more confident of how they can carry out the literacy activities at home. Yeah, and more importantly, the content is very relevant to them. Okay, so these are some of the parents' feedback they shared with me. They found that strategies were useful. It helped to increase their awareness that, to even reach the reading and spelling stage, the child needs to build up, simple literacy skill set before they can reach the next stage. It also helped to teach and guide the parents what they can do with their child. The other thing that is very common when we're doing the workshop, it's a lot of parents who share with me that it's not so much that my child doesn't want to do something, but I have to manage their behavior, because before they can even get started on any activity, the child will be running away from the parent. Yeah. And then through this workshop, I also realized that parents were more willing to share with other parents like, oh, the struggles that they encounter and what they help, they shared what they did with their child, with the other parent as well. So it was more, I would say, quite a comfortable setting for the parents to be more, to speak up and to actually know that there are other parents out there who continue to face the same challenges as they are facing. So what are the limitations of this study? Firstly, the intervention itself was only 6 weeks, so I only had 1 term with them, which is quite short. So perhaps with a longer duration, then I can start to see results. As mentioned earlier, most of the time, I only start to see progress from the child about after 6 months of intervention. Okay. Next, there's a very small sample size, so then obviously I will not be able to get any data, significant results. And the other thing is subject inclusion. Because the workshop was actually conducted in English, I could only invite participants who use English as their first language to join the program. However, I also understand in Singapore itself, being a multiracial society, right, we need to cater to our multiracial families. So as a result, maybe that's the reason why I didn't see any significant results from the research. Okay, so what are the implication and recommendations? So firstly, I know that parents actually want to play an active role to help their child with their early literacy. However, they have insufficient knowledge. They kind of know the how, but they don't really know how to execute the how part. And they also encounter a lot of behavioral challenges from the child. So what can we do as educators, as teachers? So first, we need to ensure that our training, we need to provide well-informed training that has been done based on research that they have conducted in the past. We need to choose topics that are engaging, topics that we know parents are keen to sign up, topics that parents will be able to carry out at home, and more importantly, to form a partnership with our parent. Okay? So the conclusion, FLP was not effective on the overall early literacy achievement. However, parents had positive perception of the program. So moving forward, I would say FLP could still be an approach to use to work with our parents to teach them how to help their child with their early literacy. And as a result, future directions, we could look into the content of FLP, make sure that it caters to the needs of the child and the parent. Follow-up interviews at 3 months. That's to find out if the parents will find that, oh, this is still relevant to me after 3 months of attending the workshop. And more importantly, to look into more in-depth and evidence-based research. All right. Thank you very much for attending the breakout session.